for the 2022 NFL season for the Arizona Cardinals. Plus, an NFL GM gets fired. Should Steve Keim be worried?
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, live Tuesday edition of Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Free and available on all platforms. Bye week is over. Monday night contest against the New England Patriots at home awaits the 4-8 Cardinals. A lot of question marks. A lot of ho-hum attitudes from fans. And I just kind of want to discuss how we got here, what we've experienced. And I'll talk plenty about the matchup this week as we have an extra podcast ahead of the game Monday night. Thursday, I'll give my full breakdown of Hard Knocks in season like I did last week. And if the Cardinals, continue to lose this season, we're going to be talking less about this season specifically and more about the big picture in the future. It'll be exciting. It'll kind of be sad. And there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the storylines that could be addressed if this continues to kind of spiral downhill for 2022 season for the Cardinals. There have been some positives to take away. There were and have been more negatives, as it were, being 4-8. But I'm going to discuss both. And John Robinson, GM of the Tennessee Titans, was fired today. Should Steve Keim be worried? I'll talk about that in the final segment. The positives. Let's start off with them. And these are player-centric. It feels like offensively the Cardinals have backslid. And I do want to address one thing that's very important. All teams go through injuries. All teams deal with injuries in the NFL. All of them. So to use injuries as an excuse to be 4-8 is a fool's errand, in my humblest of opinions. So if you use injuries, suspensions, what have you, as a reason, a valid reason why we should just forget what happened in 2020 and 2021 and look right in front of you instead of the broad overview of everything that's been going on over the last handful of years, it's a fool's errand, in my opinion. So I don't talk about injuries as an excuse or reason why the Cardinals are 4-8. Look at the roster the Cardinals have had offensively this year. Even if DeAndre Hopkins wasn't on the roster, and you had Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, James Conner, Zach Ertz, Kyler Murray. Even if Hollywood Brown wasn't on the roster, and you had DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore, James Conner, Zach Ertz, Kyler Murray. Talking about injuries from interior positions of the offensive line, even though Rodney Hudson is obviously a pillar of this offensive line, and he's been out pretty much the whole year. Using that as an excuse is a fool's errand, in my opinion. Now, I wanted to give that PSA. I was going to do it yesterday. I took a personal day. The positives that we've seen so far this season. 1, Rondale Moore. It's been in spurts because he's been injured, but those spurts have been fantastical. Those spurts have been Pro Bowl future infused. He's special. They figured out how to use him finally, and he's special when he's healthy. 1. 2, Zach Allen. Zach Allen deserves a second contract by the Arizona Cardinals, and they need to pay him. Every time I see Zach Allen on the sideline, he's sitting next to J.J. Watt. Every time I see Zach Allen, he's high-fiving J.J. Watt. He's found his mentor at the perfect time in his career. I feel like a mentor-mentee relationship is kind of lost on rookies in some capacity. It's necessary, but it doesn't have the real-life application that a third-year player has with a mentor because they have the tools. The game isn't too fast for them. It's about honing in your skill and being able to leverage your strengths in an effort to get another contract, to play well enough. And Zach Allen has done that. I'm not saying that J.J. Watt deserves all the credit, but I'm saying it doesn't hurt having an all-world lineman on this team right when Zach Allen was on the precipice of something great when he's healthy. And we saw it we've seen it this year. Definitely a positive. Byron Murphy looks to be a CB1. It's unbelievable to me because through 2 years, there was no real tea leaves to read that we would end up here. We saw the first 6 weeks of last season, the pass rush fell off, and Byron Murphy fell off in tow. But this year, the wide receiver ones that he's locked down, proof is in the pudding, baby. I know he's missed the last couple games. He deserves a contract from the Arizona Cardinals. Now, if they can bolster that CB room like they should have done through the draft, maybe he'll be able to solidify himself as close to a lockdown corner as we're going to see in the NFL nowadays. And one that's gone under the radar because it hasn't been as flashy as Zaven Collins. He's taken the step from year one where he couldn't get on the field and couldn't stay healthy to playing 100% of the snaps, having the green dot on game day, and proving to be a guy that if he takes this step from year 2 to year 3, he'll be a fringe Pro Bowler. That's the positives for me. There hasn't been really any game stuff. Like Hollywood Brown is an honorable mention. He played wide receiver 1 football, lights out with him and Kyler Murray through the first handful of weeks. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But when you talk Rondale Moore, you talk Zaven Collins, you talk Zach Allen, you talk Byron Murphy, that's growth, that's maturity. And those are the young players that the Cardinals are going to need to rely upon as they continue out to build their roster because the players they have now are going to get expensive at some point. And unfortunately, 2 of the players that I mentioned are going to get expensive at the end of this season. Byron Murphy and Zach Allen are both going to want new contracts. And unlike Christian Kirk last year, Byron Murphy deserves it. And we're going to see if Mikey B is going to short, Byron Murphy, and he's going to go elsewhere. Let's hope the cautionary tales end at the end of the 2022 season and history doesn't continue to repeat itself. The negatives, the lowlights, I'll hit them next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Monday Night Football, Billy Belichick comes into town. There's so much to discuss between now and then. I am fascinated to see what this week of football is going to be like for the Cardinals in practice, what the storylines are going to be, who's going to be healthy, who won't. I'll hit all of it. But first, the lowlights of the 2022 NFL season so far for the Cardinals next. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best quality candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster, for free. How does that sound? So this is what you do. You make a post, okay? Add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Just spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates who, have the right skill set and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Highlights, lowlights, 4-8 Cardinals. What will Week 14 bring? Your team every day. Alex Clancy here. You can check me out Thursday with my buddy Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans on the Locked On NFL show. There's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about as we preview the Thursday night matchup and the best storylines in sports that are at our fingertips on Thursday of this week. Highlights of the 2022 NFL season for the Arizona Cardinals. They're player-centric. Rondale Moore, Zaven Collins, Zach Allen, Byron Murphy. The lowlights. Penalties. Ill-timed timeouts. Poor third down conversions. Going for it on fourth down every time, seemingly. Kyler Murray plateauing. I feel like it's 2019. Those are the lowlights. The defense giving up more points than almost every team in the NFL. It's a low light. I think that's a skewed number. I don't think Vance Joseph has had his best year as defensive coordinator. And I also, as I've mentioned, almost saturated this channel with since the offseason started that they neglected the defense and they were relying on young players to carry the load. Sure, you take out J.J. Watt and Marcus Golden, but besides that, young players having to carry the weight. And the defense was set up, as I've mentioned multiple times. If this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, thank you. And I will give you a little, condensed microcosm of what you've missed since March of 2022. The Arizona Cardinals defense is built, talent-wise, to set the table for the offense to eat. And the offense has fasted during a majority part of the season. So, because the Cardinals defense has given up so many points, because the Cardinals defense is looked to be weak, that is a byproduct of the offense not doing its job. And when the head coach doesn't know where the defensive side of the locker room is, it makes it difficult to give any sort of consolation to the offense with injuries and such, when that is the job of the head coach to make an extremely talented roster, skill position-wise, score more points than the other team. And during a large portion of this season, they have not been able to do that. In 2 of the 4 wins the Arizona Cardinals have had this year, the defense has scored 3 touchdowns. In one of the wins this year out of the 4, Kyler Murray had to put on his Superman cape and bring back the Arizona Cardinals after they took the first half off in Vegas against the Raiders, which ended with a scoop and score by Byron Murphy. The defense, 2 pick sixes against the New Orleans Saints, 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks that catapulted this team to potentially 2 more wins than they would have had if those touchdowns were not scored. So if I'm being told that the defense is given all of the blame here because they've given up more points than pretty much every other team in the NFL, I would say watch the games and understand that the defense's job isn't to win games for the Cardinals. That's the offense's job. And the offense has come wildly short from that goal. And that's the biggest low light for me this season, is the offense has left the defense out to dry. That's not to say the defense isn't at fault. That's not to say the defensive scheme that Vance Joseph put together and the adjusting at halftime was as good and as potent and as effective as last season. Because that's what one thing that Vance Joseph could hold his hat on last season was his halftime adjustments were as close to masterful as can be. The offense has a problem. We don't know what the problem is. There's only one thing. It's very important. There's only one thing that's worse than having a problem. And it's not being able to pinpoint what the problem is. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. John Robinson, GM of the Tennessee Titans. Yes, the Tennessee Titans, who have made 4 playoff appearances in the 7 years that John Robinson has been GM, has been removed from his post. Should Steve Keim be worried? I feel silly even talking about this, but I got to talk about it. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. That's why you'll be able to find a sneak peek of Block Forever available on Locked On NFL right now. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. Khalil takes the conversation about football to the next level. He gives football fans an insider's look at the game through his eyes and through the eyes of the greatest players and personalities of all time. Khalil sits down with star players, coaches, and former pros across the league to get real about what happens on the field and behind the scenes, inside locker rooms, during team meetings, and back at the hotel. You'll hear Christian McCaffrey talk about his love-hate relationship with fantasy football, and Juju Smith-Schuster give his most honest opinions on other players and positions in the league. New episodes of Block Forever will be recorded and released every week ahead of Thursday Night Football, available for free on Audible or wherever you get your podcast. Head over to Locked On NFL for a sneak peek of Block Forever, or catch the full series available anywhere you get your podcast. Available everywhere now. Audible, get in the game. And I do love talking about local sponsors, and this one is my favorite because it's the one that I have. If you live in a sunny state like ours, it's very likely that you've been, approached by people offering you free solar. The truth is that many of these companies aren't local because that they're using misleading tactics and end up overcharging homeowners. If you've considered solar but something felt off, you're going to like today's sponsor, as I do. My Solar Nerd's mission is simple: help you get the best solar system to fit your needs. The guys at mysolarnerd.com are local and understand the nuances of going solar in Arizona. They've been doing this for a while and understand that an educated customer is a happy one. Their no-pressure approach will make sure all of your questions get answered. They firmly believe that if you live in Arizona, switching to solar should mean saving money. Our listeners will get a $50 Amazon gift card when they book a no-commitment evaluation. This promotion is only for our listeners that are homeowners, so keep that in mind. Visit mysolarnerd.com. It's like Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us section. Make the switch to solar on your terms. Start your research process by visiting mysolarnerd.com and show Locked On some love by letting them know we sent you. Folks, going solar doesn't need to be complicated. mysolarnerd.com makes it easy. Highlights, lowlights, Steve Keim lights. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Highlights of the 2022 NFL season so far for the Arizona Cardinals: Rondale Moore, Zaven Collins, Zach Allen, Byron Murphy. Lowlights, the offense not doing its job. Yes, injuries happen. There have been injuries, suspensions sustained by the Arizona Cardinals offense. And I'm guessing at least a handful of teams would take this offense with just Hollywood Brown or with just DeAndre Hopkins over the offense they have now. The defense has been hung out to dry by the offense for the large portion of the 2022 NFL season. That's the biggest low light. And unfortunately, the head coach calls the plays for the offense, which adds a little extra, important wrinkle to whatever the hell's going on here at State Farm Stadium and on road games for the Cardinals. John Robinson has been fired by the Tennessee Titans. GM, 4 years in the playoffs out of 7 years. Pretty good. Pretty good. Now, what he's going to be remembered for is not the win against Baltimore, where Lamar Jackson's arm almost fell off. He threw the ball 75 times. I can't remember. He threw the ball a lot that game. Not that win. Not the pick six walk-off win against Tom Brady in the playoffs. May remember I think they were up 21-3. I can't remember exactly, against Kansas City. And unfortunately, he was the GM for the team who birthed Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't the 50 touchdown passes his first year starting quarterback. It was the last play of the first half against Tennessee when Tennessee was absolutely manhandling the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes running down the sideline. Instead of going out of bounds to kick a field goal, he spins, does a pirouette, and gets all the way into the end zone for a touchdown. That was the birth of Patrick Mahomes to me. And John Robinson was the GM of the Tennessee Titans. What he's going to be remembered for most, because we are a recency bias, entity, is trading A.J. Brown. Probably not the best business decision. And check out Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans. He did a great job. He does a great job covering this. And he's my co-host on Thursday, Locked On NFL. But I believe he said it was only a couple $1 million a year difference. Tennessee didn't want to give it to him. And we all remember the video. I think it was a 20-second video that went viral on draft day, in the draft room, in the war room, when Mike Vrabel found out that they were trading A.J. Brown. Video says 1,000 words. So John Robinson gets canned. Should he have? I don't know. I don't cover the Titans. You can check out, again, at Tic Tac Titans on Twitter. Tyler Rowland does a great job breaking down film. One of the best I've ever seen him breaking down film. He will give you the honest truth about what he thinks about the team that he covers. That is the Tennessee Titans. Should he have gotten fired? I don't know. But it just makes you think. A guy that's about 20 games over 500 in his tenure as GM over 7 years, making the playoffs over 50% of the time, even though I think they lost in the first round twice. That's not the point. Okay? The point is, with what we're seeing with Steve Keim, it just makes you think. When you look at other organizations and how they remove people from their posts, it just makes you think when you're looking at the Arizona Cardinals, like, should he have been, like, I thought about this today. And, I'm going to do a very positive podcast tomorrow. 3 most positive things we've seen in 2022. Because a lot of what we're going to do from now until the end of the season, especially if the Cardinals keep losing, is we're going to be talking about the future. We'll talk about this season, obviously, and we'll talk about the games. We'll talk about the storylines. But we're going to talk a lot more macro. And I'm going to talk about 3 positives tomorrow. But, I thought about it today. I'm like, should I do a full Steve Keim podcast? And I sat down, I took some notes, and I'm like, should Steve Keim still have his job? And I made arguments for yes. And, there were some arguments. There sure were. They made the NFC Championship game 7 years ago. They've had winning seasons. Trading for DeAndre Hopkins, trading for Hollywood Brown, signing James Conner, trading for Zach Ertz. You see the term trading a lot. But then I look at what, the main job description of a general manager is. And it's to build out a winning roster and handle day-to-day. Okay. Do the Cardinals have a winning roster this season? If healthy, do they have a winning roster this season? Yes. Are the players not playing up to potential? Yes. That was oddly quick. That was odd. No, the Cardinals players are not playing up to potential. Why? Oh, injury, whatever. I don't talk about injury. Like, everybody has injuries. Okay. Who's in charge of hiring the head coach, the coaching staff? Oh, okay. So let's get a little bit deeper here. Okay, GM and owner, but they're pretty much the same person. That's where it gets sticky. It's like, for those who don't believe in Kliff Kingsbury, Steve Keim's idea. For those who don't believe in Kyler Murray, Steve Keim's idea. So you can't defend Steve Keim as GM and also think that either one nor both Kyler Murray or Kliff Kingsbury are the guys in their respective positions. You can't do both. So, should Steve Keim still have his job? No. That was my thought process on all of it. Because the roster is, although top heavy, it's been more like, okay, I'm going to break this down in a very, very minimalistic way, because this is how I like to discuss things. It paints a good picture. Okay, so say you get vanilla ice cream, whatever ice cream you like, with chocolate sauce or caramel sauce or whatever, butterscotch, marshmallow cream. Damn, I want dessert now. Okay, so say you get a cup of ice cream with chocolate sauce or caramel, whatever topping. Okay. Sometimes you get a dollop where it just kind of like sits on top and it trickles down a little bit. And then sometimes you get a bigger thing and then it drizzles down more on the side. I'm getting to my point, I promise. Traditionally, what a top-heavy roster looks like, that Steve Keim has built, and that's kind of his MO, even in the mid, 2015s, 2017, 2015, it was like that. Top-heavy is when the chocolate sauce just stays on top. Okay, so it's like, oh, that's the top-heavy. That's the top part. Okay, and then what the roster looks like now is chocolate sauce is dribbled a little bit further down. So it's top-heavy, but it's kind of seeped in because there's more good players on the top than there have been. Having said that, vanilla ice cream is still vanilla ice cream, or whatever ice cream you like is there, and that shows the lack of depth. That made sense, right? Leave it in the comments. That made sense. The point is that there's a lot more talent on the roster offensively than there has been, but it's still top heavy because the defense was neglected, in my opinion. Aside from the emerging players, there aren't any set it and forget it defensive players this year besides Buda Baker, Jalen Thompson. I mean, I guess you could say Zach Allen. Zaven Collins has played fine. He plays well enough to be the Mike. He plays well enough to wear the green dot, but he's not a Pro Bowler. Byron Murphy was fringe until he got hurt. Offense has a litany of top skill position players, and the Cardinals still can't get it done offensively. I know the offensive line is banged up. Ask what happened to Russell Wilson when he was in Seattle for 8 years, and he never had a good offensive line after they traded Max Unger for Jimmy Graham. You adapt, you evolve. And the Cardinals haven't. So John Robinson gets fired. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give Stevie Baby a real look here. And I have. I mean, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to check my work. Has he built out a pretty good roster? Yes. Are there still deficiencies? Of course. And I will leave you with this. And I still hold this because I still think Kyler Murray's the guy. Okay, I do. But I think that Steve Keim was selfish with the Kyler Murray and Kliff Kingsbury hire and drafting. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm being very careful with how I say this because I do think that Kyler Murray's still going to be elite. I do. Steve Keim gambled the Arizona Cardinals' future on a man who's never won at any level as a coach, and on a quarterback who was going to play baseball a few months earlier and only started one full year in college. Because if it didn't work, he'd be fired and, he'd go get a job somewhere else. But the Cardinals would be in shambles for years to come. So it's worked, but it was a heavy gamble to sign Kliff Kingsbury and draft Kyler Murray. The Kyler Murray part worked. Kliff Kingsbury, do with it as you wish. With John Robinson getting fired, it just makes the Cardinals look silly that Steve Keim's still the GM. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals.